AITAH for having a monthly rage room session with my sister after my wife cheated on me 6 years ago? Story 1. I want to get a couple of things out of the way. First, I completely love my wife. She is an amazing wife and mother to our 2 children. I love her so much. Second, I have completely forgiven her for cheating on me 6 years and have no resentments whatsoever. Now to the actual story. Long story short, my wife cheated on me 6 years ago. She had a makeout session with her ex before he left the country, and she immediately confessed to me the next day. She said she did not have sex with him, and it was only limited to kissing, and I believed her. However, it did take me a long time to forgive her, almost 2 years, but I ultimately did it because of her hard work. Now, the day she confessed to cheating on me, I immediately told my sister everything and told her I had a lot of anger and resentment, but I was willing to work with my wife to forgive her. My sister recommended a rage room to deal with my anger because she herself found it very therapeutic, and she said she would join me because she too was extremely angry about my wife cheating on me. Our first rage room session was actually extremely therapeutic, where we broke a lot of items and vented a lot. We were both laughing by the end of it. We carried this on monthly and I told my wife about it, which she was sad about, but she accepted it. We've carried this on monthly for 6 years now. It's become a tradition between my sister and me, and we both enjoy it a lot, and it has nothing to do with my wife anymore. Although it started with vent sessions about my wife, it has now extended to venting about life in general. However, my wife thinks it still has to do with her cheating incident and prefers that I stop it. I'm trying to convince her that it has nothing to do with her, but she doesn't believe me. I don't really want to stop this rage room tradition just because my wife is sad about it. It's something I genuinely enjoy doing. AITAH, first comment, AITAH. However, perhaps your wife can't move on from the constant reminder of her mistake. I get why she wants it to stop. I also get why you want it to continue. I hear everyone else saying that she has no right to complain because she kissed her ex years ago. I don't agree. I think she has proved she is worthy of your forgiveness according to you and has a right to be heard in this marriage as much as you do. I understand it's not intentional, but your actions appear to be causing hurt for your wife. Now that it's been brought to your attention, it's up to you if you continue to choose do so, if you can't convince her that it has nothing to do with her kissing another man. Perhaps, as others have suggested, including her a few times so she doesn't view it as a punishment or personal attack might be helpful. Second comment. You and your sister created an healthy alternative for you two to express your built-up anger without taking it out on the people you are mad at. I'm going to assume that if it wasn't for this rage room, your resentment towards your wife would linger and cause problems for you two in the long run. This rage room is also useful for letting out your frustrations on other things that make you mad in a controlled environment. It has helped you get out all that anger and allowed you to feel better afterwards. If your wife wanted you to stop because she thinks it's about her, then that's a her problem, not a you problem. Even if she's right, I'm also going to assume the rage room prevents you from bringing that negativity into your home, which is beneficial for her and you. Her request is unreasonable due to her reason. Let's say she's telling the truth and you stop like she wanted. You will resent her for making you stop something you find enjoyable, and because the rage room was your outlet, you will need to find an alternative to deal with your anger or struggle to do so, which isn't fair for you and selfish of your wife to put you through all because she's butthurt about it. This is a moment you will have to have a sit down with your wife and talk about it on a deeper level. Explain to her the purpose of the rage room and ask why she's so insistent on getting you to stop. Communication is key for a reason, and maybe you guys can come up with a solution or an understanding of each other. Best of luck. Story 2. AITAH for telling my son I will never tell him who his biological father is. I, 38F, had a particularly bad argument with my oldest son, 20M, last night. My husband, 41M, is my oldest son's stepfather and has been in his life since my oldest was 4 and has been married to me since my son was 7. We also have another son, 6M, and I'm currently pregnant. My husband and oldest son have a close, loving relationship and probably have had one of the smoothest stepfather-stepson relationships around. That said, my son has always been curious about his biological father, which I understand, but usually has kept that curiosity to the occasional question that I nip in the bud, then no further questions for a long time. Recently, my son has been asking me more about who his biological father is, whom he occasionally just refers to as his father, which I and my husband have found hurtful, though he says he doesn't mean that he doesn't think of my husband as his dad when he says that. He hasn't dropped the issue. I don't ever want to tell my son who his biological father is because he was conceived via rape, and I know that knowing this would be immensely hurtful to my son. He is sadly quite similar to me in that he is more than happy to blame himself for things, and I absolutely do not want him to feel bad about this in any way. I don't even know anything about the rapist either, so it isn't even like my son would get any practical information, medical history details from knowing any of this either. Obviously, I've told my son that I adore him, and I'm happy he's my son and in my life, but I have no interest in elaborating on who his biological father is. Anyway, last night my son and I had quite a bad argument last night, and I told him during it that I would never, ever tell him who his biological father is or anything about him. This basically ended the argument, and while I've apologized to my son about being harsh, he still is upset that I said this, but I stand by it. I just don't know what to do, and if this decision is even right. First comment. As a survivor of say myself, I am not going to label you an AITAH for not wanting to talk about it. I do understand that you don't want your son to know that he was conceived in violence and against your will. It sounds like you have been able to love him despite the circumstances of his conception, and I think that is why it's impossible to label you an AITAH. However, your son is 20, old enough to process the truth. Maybe you both need the help of a therapist to ensure this very difficult conversation does not go off the rails, but I do think your refusal to tell him has the potential to drive a wedge between you and him. Tell him you're sorry for being harsh. Tell him it's a painful conversation for you and you need to talk to a therapist before you're ready to talk to him about the sperm donor. This has the potential to bring you closer or drive you apart. It's been 20 years since the rape. You have lived with the reminder of that rape since then. It's time to process that with the help of a trauma-informed therapist. Nobody is the AITAH. You're both in pain. The way out is through. Best of wishes up. Second comment. I was conceived by rape and my mother always told me she didn't want me, didn't want to be a mother, and tried everything she could think of to provoke a miscarriage. Abortion was legalized the year I was born. That has been formative for me. You have done a phenomenal job loving your son and another man despite it all. You deserve credit for that. Sometimes the truth is ugly. Let him know you're refusing out of love for him, wanting to protect him from something he's better off not knowing. Keep him innocent. Maybe when he's older, when you've had even more time to distance yourself, maybe the help of that awesome therapist, you'll be able to process the emotions that come up when you think or talk about the assault. It would be good for you too. Ask him for a timeout. Ask him to let the topic rest for a year, and then resolve yourself to figure this out within the next year. What to tell him, how to tell him, etc. Can you be vague? Say, I did not choose when or with whom I got pregnant with you. I know who your bio dad is, and I don't want you to know of him, because I don't want you to think any part of him is in you. I'm scared it will influence you in a way that continuously reminds me of him and triggers my emotions from the incident. I do think him wanting to know where he came from is natural and healthy. He's becoming an adult and likely is starting to understand that the world is not always good and healthy and true ugly scary shit happens too. I'm so sorry you have to deal with this, as if the rape and resulting pregnancy was not enough trauma for one person in one lifetime. Third comment. This is not sustainable. I think due to widespread ancestry DNA tracing, it is extremely likely that your son could locate his father without too much difficulty. Your worst case scenario here is probably that you don't tell him. He finds the father or his father's family on his own through ancestry DNA tests, and still mad at you, believes the lies of the rapist over you. Then your relationship is compromised forever by your own son's betrayal and rejection of you, and he decides to have a relationship with him because he doesn't believe you due to both his innate distrust of you, due to your refusal to tell him anything, and to being manipulated by your assailant. Now there is a rapist in your family's social circle, and not just any rapist, your rapist, who might well be hanging out with or babysitting your future granddaughters. Rapist's narcissism knows no bounds. Tell your son, with the help of a therapist if necessary, if for no other reason than to get ahead of the almost inevitable lies of the man who raped you. I know someone who had a similar scenario. She told her son that he was the beautiful rainbow after a hurricane. He was the good thing that came of it, but that it didn't diminish her devastation, only gave her something beautiful to have and hold during the cleanup afterwards.